Young and 50, we want all
Hey, what's going on, y'all? What's up? So we have another day in R. Kelly trial, and we're at the point where we've had another alleged witness. Well, not alleged witness. We've had another person come out and testify, and we're trying to figure out who Jane Doe number 5 is. Now, this is really no big secret. It's more or less a rhetorical question. But I also like to throw that out there that I don't really know who it is, as I wasn't at the trial. I don't have access to any special information. And I believe most people don't have access to any special information. But some time ago, I did a video. And in that video, I actually speculated on who Jane Doe number 5 was. And I thought it was actually Faith Rogers. And many people came out and they corrected me. And they said, hey, you got your Jane Does mixed up. And they said Jane Doe number 5 is Azriel, right? So based off of the people who corrected me, I believe Jane Doe number 5 is Azriel, but however, I wasn't at the trial and I don't have access to the transcripts. I understand that there's some people out there who have access to the transcripts. I myself do not. And, because I don't have access to this information, I can only speculate as to who Jane Doe number 5 is and what she testified about. Now, to actually help me with this, I actually have the assistance. Let me actually share my screen here so you can see my source of information. I actually have information from USA Today, right? And the article basically reads, it says, R. Kelly trial, woman testifies she was coerced into abortion, pressed for sex before audition, right? And then we scroll down. We're not going to read the entire article, but we're just going to read, the relevant pieces. And it goes on. The witness referred to as Jane Doe or Zell, aka Azriel, in the federal courtroom in Brooklyn, says she met R. Kelly while she was on his Black Panties tour, right? And was told she could audition for him. But she testified when she got to his hotel room, he had a different plan. Mex before singing. Now 23, she said she told R. Kelly she was 18. She testified that he told her he would listen to her sing and would take care of me for life, right? So this was the promise. Now, funny enough, this alleged promise opens up a world to another type of civil lawsuit. Typically, when a person promises you something, there's implications of that, but we'll park that for now. And hopefully I'll remember to come back to that towards the end of this session, right? But he made a promise that he was going to take care of Zell for life if she agreed to allow him to perform a Mex act on her. She testified she had no romantic interest in Kelly. And that's interesting. That's interesting for a lot of reasons. I'm just gonna kind of interject right here. A lot of times, many relationships don't necessarily involve a romantic interest. Many a times in some relationship, there are arrangements, just as you just heard me read, right? A relationship, for the most part, as I've heard another YouTube stated, and I forget who, but I was watching someone's channel and it was a female. She said a relationship is an exchange. Both parties are giving up something, right? So romantic interest is not always the object of the relationship, right? But I digress. Let's just go ahead and get on with the testimony. I just wanted to sing, she said. I genuinely wanted his input. They were soon regularly having mechs, with Kelly nearly always videotaping the encounters, she said. She wept when she testified, and she contracted an STD after sex with Kelly. She said he hadn't disclosed he had a sexual STD. This man purposely gave me something he knew he had, she said. He could have controlled the situation. She said he once flew into a rage because she had texted a friend about him. He grabbed a size 12 sneakers from his closet and assaulted her with it, she testified. Now, this is further confirmation that this could be Azriel, because Azriel has come out on social media and several news outlets and said that she was beat with a gym shoe, right, or sneaker, right? I think it was the Sun, if I'm not mistaken, where she came out and she made these comments. So there's no mystery as to who it is, right? He hit me all over, she said. I was running from him and fighting back, but a 4'11", 98 pounds, she said she was no match for him. Another time, as a punishment, Kelly forced her to rub feces on her face and videotape it, she said. She was also coerced into getting an abortion in 2017 after Kelly said she wasn't ready to have a child with her. She added. So again, this is another confirmation that this could be allegedly Azriel, not really allegedly. There's YouTube videos out there where, she's talking on the phone and she's saying that R. Kelly made her eat feces. So, more than likely, this is probably going to be Azriel, at least I believe, right? Based on the information in this article and as it relates to some videos that she's done, right? Then it goes on. When she finally revealed to him she was underage, she said Kelly slapped her across the face and kept her, slapped her across his face, but kept her in his life, she said. The jury was shown notes she wrote to herself about how to stay in line with rules when she was around him. Tell daddy everything, she had written. And I think this is basically where this article just kind of veers off and it talks about previous testimony. So, this is what we have, right? So it's no secret as to who Azriel potentially was. Hey, what's going on, D Slade? What's going on? Let Me Talk, Harlem, New York, Matthew Beckel. I encourage you guys to get on and speak, and I encourage you guys to get on and join the conversation and essentially tell us who you think Jane Doe number 5 is, whether or not you believe R. Kelly gave Jane Doe number 5 an STD, and more importantly, what do you think of Jane Doe number 5 and her testimony, right? So now there's a few things that jumps into my mind after reading that article. Hey, what's going on, Cherry M? I encourage you to come on and speak and join the conversation and let us know who you think Jane Doe number 5 is and whether or not you think R. Kelly gave her an STD. So a couple of things that jumps out in my mind. The first thing that jumps, let me actually share the screen again. The first thing that jumps out in my mind is that, there's a promise here. There's a promise, and I'm not sure what you guys think of this, and you guys can let me know. But she says she testified that he told her he would listen to her sing and would take care of me for life, right? That's a pretty big promise. Now, I'm not saying that R. Kelly said this, and I'm not saying that he didn't say this. And essentially this is uh, Zell's words against R. Kelly, right? But this actually opens things up for an interesting turn of events, right? And I don't know if a lot of people are picking up on this, but basically that is a contract. So if R. Kelly made a promise, and that's an if because I don't know, I wasn't there, so it's alleged, right? So if R. Kelly made a promise and she agreed to give up something in exchange, then that would essentially constitute a contract, a binding agreement. Now, from my understanding, most contracts don't necessarily have to be in writing. A verbal agreement is a contract. In fact, all a contract is an agreement between two parties. Now, the interesting twist in all of this is that the way this article reads it, right? The way this article reads, basically in this article, she is, let me just read it. She testified that he told her he would listen to her sing and would take care of me for life if she agreed to allow him to perform a sex act on her, right? And she testified she had no romantic interest in Kelly, right? So therein lies a contract potentially. The only problem with this is that, you can't make a contract to do something illegal. However, at the end of the day, it's going to be the jury that's going to decide whether or not this was an illegal contract. Typically, if one agrees to exchange money for mechs, then that contract is basically going to be illegal because it's illegal to perform or allow to perform mech acts on you for money. That would be illegal. But if this issue is raised in a civil trial and worded a slightly different way, for example, she could say that R. Kelly agreed to essentially take care of her for life if she agreed to be with him for a certain period of time, or if she agreed to have an intimate relationship with him. Now, from my understanding, it's legal to actually have an intimate partner, and because you have an intimate partner, you allow them a budget or stipend or something like that. You're basically paying that person. And, this is based off of some information I've heard, from a legal source. It's legal to pay for intimacy, right? That's what I've heard, so I don't, if anyone's interested in the actual facts as to that, I can provide that later. I don't want to hold this video up. But if it's reworded and presented to a jury, it's for the jury to actually decide. Now, why do I raise this and why is this important? Well, again, I'm not saying, and I said this over and over and over again, I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. I don't know if R. Kelly is going to win or lose, right? However, there's a chance he could win, and there's also a chance that he could lose, right? So if he loses, and I don't know that R. Kelly doesn't have any more financial resources, but if he loses, I've done videos which talks about the post-conviction process. And in that post-conviction process, we talk about the forfeiture proceeding or the income seizure proceeding, whereby the government can come in and say, hey, these resources were made through the creation or during, the time that a defendant committed a crime. He made these, this money, or he gained these assets. Or they can say he already had these assets and he used these assets to essentially commit a crime. So therefore, we're going to take this money. We're going to come in and we're going to take all that. So now this section becomes important because part of the post-conviction proceedings allows a third party to come in and lay claim to the actual assets in question. So, in a scenario or in a world where R. Kelly loses, right? In a fantasy world where R. Kelly loses, the government is going to first take the step of trying to seize all of his assets, all of his remaining assets, right? Now allegedly, according to his lawyers, he doesn't have any money. But if he does, if he has any royalties coming in, if he have any rights to income in the future, right? Because we all know that he has that tenant landlord dispute whereby the landlords have gotten a law, won a lawsuit to garnish his royalties. Once they've garnished enough money to pay off what was owed, one would imagine that those royalties could flow back to R. Kelly. But in a situation where the government has basically won their case, what's going to happen is that Azriel, or Zell, as they put it in his article, will be able to come in, and there's a proceeding in the post tongue tied. There's a proceeding in the post conviction proceedings that allows Azriel to come in and essentially say, "Hey, I am a third party, and part of this money was mine. I have a contract with him, and I basically fulfill my end of that bargain. And the other end that he has to fulfill is he has to take care of me for life." So then she could come in and essentially make claim to any assets that he may have left, right? Now, coincidentally, if such a promise was made to Zell, I would imagine that such a promise could have been made to Jocelyn Savage or Joycelyn Savage, right? So that's one of the things that popped up, in my mind. One of the things that I noticed, right? So, guys, what do you think about this? I encourage you to, tap in, join in on the conversation. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Do you think that R. Kelly should be liable to, pay out money if he loses? Right? This is one of the things that I noticed. Join in the conversation. Let me know what you think. Who is Jane Doe number 5? I mean, it's more of a rhetorical question. More importantly, do you think that Jane Doe number 5 has actually given Azriel an STD? And we're going to get into that more in a second. And also, what do you think about Jane Doe number 5 and her testimony? Me personally, I actually thought that Jane Doe number 5 would be a red herring. I thought that she wouldn't actually testify. As a matter of fact, I made a video called, Azriel, the red herring known as Azriel. And in that video, I talked about how her credibility was so shot that she wouldn't actually testify. Now, I don't have any notes on the cross-examination and what the defense said. So we don't know the total impact of Azriel's testimony, right? We can only guess. All I have is the articles. If someone else has something, definitely join in and tell us how that cross-examination went. But for the most part, all I have is, what's been provided to me by, the news articles. So that was one thing that basically popped up, that basically jumped at me in my mind, So yeah, if you're just tuning in, join in on the conversation. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Do you think that her testimony means anything? Do you think her testimony will be the testimony that could potentially get R. Kelly evicted? And Cherry M says, even though she is saying this doesn't mean she have to prove that RK made this promise. Well, I mean, that's all part of the process. I think that what would happen is that in that post-conviction proceeding, what's going to happen is that I think you can actually have a jury trial. I can't remember correctly. but it's actually in the video series I did where I talk about post-conviction proceedings. But here's what can happen. I think that if in a fantasy world where R. Kelly loses, what would probably happen is that R. Kelly would be too preoccupied with the other phases of the post conviction proceedings that he wouldn't really have time to defend himself. And that's one of the unfortunate things about all this, because when you go through the post conviction proceedings, that's the phase where you try to reduce the time that you're receiving. And I think Bill Cosby didn't really uh, participate in his post conviction proceedings. He just kind of, bit the bullet, and he just took his chances to try to beat it on appeal. But if you want to participate, then you're going to have to make some type of admission, or you're going to have to make a victim impact statement, right? So they're expecting you to come out, and they're expecting you to say, well, I can see how, this affected, the victims, this and the other. And I regret, what I've done and the role that I played, so on and so forth. They want to hear something like that, right? The other route that you can go is that you can actually talk about how you made a difference in the community, and, who will be hurt if you're missing, like if you have children, so on and so forth, and you go to jail. You would be able to talk about how your children would suffer, and things of that nature, right? I'm not sure what R. Kelly could say, right? I have to put some thought into it. But these are the type of things that will come up. And the idea is that you have several opportunities to try to reduce the sentencing that you could potentially receive. They put this report together and they hand it over to the judge, and then the judge makes a final decision. Now, because all of that is going on, I don't think that he's going to waste too much time trying to object to the seizure portion of it, right? And even more so, I don't think he's going to have that much time to actually defend himself against someone like Azrael coming in during the post-conviction asset seizure phase to get his assets, right? So I just don't think he'll have time for it. So she could potentially get paid, like in a fantasy world where Kelly loses, she can get paid big time if he has anything to essentially lose. Now, other things that has basically popped out at me or that's popped up in my mind is the actual claim that he actually gave her an STD. Now, here's a problem. Here is the problem with that. Essentially, from the way I see it, is that what they're going to do is that they're going to try to have several people come in and make this claim. They have Geronda Pace. She's made that claim. Now you have Zell coming in making that claim, right? You have all these people coming in making this claim. I think the next person they're going to have come in is going to be probably is going to be Faith Rogers. I'm not sure how soon she's going to come in and make that claim, but I think, Faith Rogers eventually is going to come in and she's going to testify, and she's going to claim that R. Kelly essentially gave her a STD. So that becomes a problem in the sense that they're putting that in the minds of the jury, and they want to get that conviction whereby they're saying, look at all these victims who he has given essentially the same STD to. And, they're going to try to make the argument that, something needs to be done. Otherwise, he would continue to go on, giving, this particular STD to different people. However, I think from a defense perspective, I would just say, I would probably argue that it's not a crime, right? I would say it would be, if any of this stuff is true, it could possibly be a cause for a civil lawsuit, but it definitely shouldn't be a cause for a criminal lawsuit. And that's based off the fact that it's a very, very, very common STD. And I think there's been testimony from one of the victim's sisters. I actually heard this on someone else's YouTube channel, and they had some receipts where Geronda Pace's sister has essentially come out, and she has basically said that Geronda Pace could have allegedly, all this, everything that I say in this broadcast is going to be alleged. Everything that Geronda Pace has said is essentially a lie, allegedly. And essentially, Geronda Pace had the STD before she even met R. Kelly. And in fact, there's some people out there that are theorizing that Geronda Pace could have been the source of the STD. Now, I'm not saying that she had the STD before she met R. Kelly, and I'm not saying that R. Kelly has the STD, but obviously his doctor has come out and testified that R. Kelly has had the STD since 2007. I've actually read comments of some people on my page who is actually a medical professional. And she said, based on the method they used to test R. Kelly, she said that that isn't a confirmation that R. Kelly actually had the STD, because she said something to the nature of, once you get the test back, you still have to run the test again to get a positive reading or something of that nature. I'm not in the medical field, so I'd have to read that over a couple of times, and I didn't really prepare to bring it. But they have to win this case beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? And I don't think they're going to be able to argue that the STD is a link to a criminal enterprise. Now, here's the other thing, and you'll probably hear me say this in subsequent videos, is that, of course, R. Kelly had an enterprise, and of course, he was involved in an enterprise. That's not really the question. The question is whether or not he had a criminal enterprise. And because his employees may have done some illegal things on his behalf, I don't necessarily think it makes it a criminal enterprise. And I'm not saying his employees has done anything criminal on his behalf, right? But of course, his manager, his tour manager, I guess that's the best phrase for him, has come out and testified and said that he basically orchestrated the Aaliyah marriage license, right? You have that. And you have, other allegations out there. But I still argue that that doesn't make it a criminal enterprise. I would argue that R. Kelly's enterprise existed for the sole purpose of promoting his music and making money off of tours. And I think that even though he may have instructed some of his employees, right? He's instructed some of his employees to arrange his dates. That in itself doesn't make it a criminal enterprise, right? So honestly, this is just kind of a huge stretch. I think they're trying to compare the case. I was watching another video out there, and they were saying that this isn't necessarily a long shot, because there's another criminal case out there. I think it's called Nixium or something like that, where this one guy who's really smart, really intelligent, and he had this Ponzi scheme where he would create these personal development workshops. And in these personal development workshops, he would show people how to, improve themselves. And it was kind of like a pyramid scheme. And essentially, you had to get a lot of people to come in under you, and then somewhere down the line, you would make money. But Essentially, it was just a bunch of rich people buying these really ultra expensive workshops. And with these workshops, uh, the guy was making a lot of money. But in order for you to actually get something out of this, you had to be in the top tier. And the only way that you could be in the top tier is that you had to bring in allegedly a sex slave, right? I'm saying allegedly because I don't remember all the details correctly. And what this would entail is that you would have to have a sex slave that, you could basically use and abuse and that would carry out all your desires and you would dominate them. And you would also have to turn that slave over to the guy ahead that was ahead of the group. I think it was called Nixium or something like that. So that guy was actually indicted, and they used a RICO statute to essentially indict him, right? And I think they're using that as a precedent, right? Whereas with R. Kelly's situation is really not the case. From my understanding, from listening to the testimony and reading some of the testimony, not listen, I'm sorry, reading some of the testimony of a former employee, sometimes, he would be tasked with essentially driving, some of his dates back and forth. And that, in my opinion, is not a criminal enterprise. Just because your employer tells you, hey, you can be working for anywhere. You could be working for any company, and your boss could come down and say, hey, you know what? I need you to be my personal assistant. My girlfriend is downstairs. I want you to go downstairs and get her, escort her upstairs, and have her sit in the conference room. Well, the fact that an employee goes and does that doesn't mean that the employee is participating in a criminal enterprise. He's just basically following his employer's orders, and that's it. So I think that in order for R. Kelly's organization to be a criminal enterprise, I think they would have to have had some direct benefit in the criminal organization and not simply just receiving a check from their employer, right? For example, a mobster who goes out and he basically sells drugs, he's basically a part of a criminal enterprise because he's going to benefit directly from the drugs that he sells, and he's going to share some of those profits with his employer, right? Or a mobster who has a Mex ring, that mobster is basically going to benefit directly from the profits from the Mex ring, and he's going to share those profits with the employer, right? We don't have that type of thing here. We just simply have an employee giving his, we just have an employer giving his employees, instructions, right? And none of this actually fits in a criminal enterprise whatsoever. So I think, and you're going to hear me talk about this more. I don't know if I'll get a chance to do the legal analysis, but I'll probably come up and do a more thorough talk on, beating the RICO statutes. But essentially, I don't see it as a criminal enterprise. You just see an employee following their employer's orders. If you work for whomever you work for and your boss says, hey, go downstairs, pick this package up and basically put it in my office, and you go downstairs, you pick the package up, you put it in the office. Then subsequently, your boss tells you, hey, look, I need you to take these keys, drive the company car, go over, to this address, pick up this package and bring it back and put it in my office. You're going to do just that. It's not your business to look inside the package. It's not your business to ask, what, package you're picking up and dropping off, because your employer more than likely is going to tell you not to look at it, and he's going to tell you it's none of your business. So you're just an employee who's picking up packages and delivering packages on behalf of your employer. Now, if it's later found that those packages that you've been carrying all over the place contains, heroin, Does that then and there mean that you were a part of a criminal enterprise? No. It just means you were an employee running errands uh, on your company's behalf as directed for your boss. And that's the way I see R. Kelly's situation. I don't see how these people are going to say that his employees benefited from this alleged criminal enterprise. I think if Mary. So again, if you just joined the conversation, if you just joined the chat, please hop on StreamYard, join the conversation. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what your thoughts are. Why do you believe that Jane Doe number 5 is Azriel? Do you think that R. Kelly gave Jane Doe number 5 an STD? And generally, what are your thoughts and opinion about Jane Doe number 5 and her testimony? So, that's my thought on the STD and also, the whole criminal enterprise. I think there was something else that essentially stood out to me. Just give me a second. Let me actually share my screen, go back to the article. Um, so now the lying and the part of lying and basically having mechs, right? So allegedly, she told R. Kelly that she was 18, right? And later she reveals that she's actually underage. But in this article, I don't hear her say exactly what age she allegedly was, right? One second. Where is it hiding? Yeah. When she finally revealed to him she was underage, she said Kelly slapped her across the face, but kept her in his life, right? So she doesn't say what age she actually was, right? So I find that interesting. And I'm not sure if that's just something that is being withheld from us. Um, I'm not sure if it's something that's being withheld from us by the person who wrote the actual article, or if it's something that she withheld on the witness stand. I'm not sure, but I think it's interesting she didn't say what age she actually was when she actually met R. Kelly, right? Um, I just find it interesting. Now, the other thing that jumps out at me is the alleged violence, right? The alleged violence. And just share my screen here again. She said once he flew into a rage because she had texted a friend about him, he grabbed a size 12 sneaker from his closet and assaulted her with it, she testified. He hit me all over. She said I was running from him and fighting back, but a 4'11", 98 pounds, she said she was no match for him, right? Another time, as a punishment, Kelly forced her to rub, feces on her face and videotaped it, she said. She was also coerced into getting an abortion in 2017 after Kelly said he wasn't ready to have a child with her, she added. So she's testifying, and allegedly she is saying that she was physically abused by Kelly. Now, this is kind of a problem. This is kind of a problem because, again, I think what they're going to try to do, they're going to constantly try to get, all these alleged victims to come out and say that, he beat me, he did this to me, so on and so forth. Now, it's tricky because I'm not sure. So it's tricky in the sense that, they're going to allege that he beat them. But on the same token, I've heard other people argue on their YouTube channel that he just simply had a lot of tumultuous relationships where they were basically fighting each other, right? And this could be a possible defense for him to basically say, "Hey, these girls were always fighting me, and we were constantly physically fighting." I'm not sure how the defense actually countered this. And then the other thing is, I'm not sure if um, this actually fits in a RICO statute. To me, it really doesn't, right? Um, if they want to come out and say that he was a serial physical abuser of women, that's one thing. But how does this really fit into a RICO statute? In my personal opinion, if the allegations are true that he was fighting with these women, it can basically go both ways. And I'll say that to say this: I find that people who fight in their relationships typically attract other people who like to fight in their relationships, right? And I would also say that typically, from what I've seen, people who fight in relationships, sometimes they actually, and I'm not saying any of this is the case with, Azriel or Geronda Pace, so on and so forth. I'm just talking about my own personal experience, right? So I've seen people fight tooth and nail in a relationship, and then they get out of that relationship and they get into a new relationship where they do the same thing, right? So I'm not blaming any of the alleged victims. I'm not victim bashing anything like that. But I'm just, saying that, and it goes for R. Kelly as well, that, sometimes when people are used to fighting in relationships, they leave a relationship, and then in the next relationship, they basically typically do the same thing. FYJ, what was the focus? Like, tell us, like, where are you getting your information from, and how did they focus on the STD? Again, I encourage you to join and speak your piece, FYJ. Tell me what you think about, the articles that you read, or if you have some inside information. Join the talk and basically talk about it. So, yeah. So that's going to be pretty. That's going to be a challenge that they have to overcome, is because they're going to constantly bring out these alleged victims, and they've basically set these alleged victims up to say the same thing. There's a pattern now. Geronda Pace, he is basically saying he beat me, he gave me an STD. Azriel, she's coming out, she's saying the same thing. He beat me, he gave me an STD. And they're just going to try to drill this in over and over and over and over. Like I said, Faith Rogers has yet to testify. I don't know if she will testify, but I can imagine that if she does testify, she's going to say the same thing. So they're going to have to get around this. Again, the information that we're getting from the news outlet is basically biased, because they're basically just telling everything from a one-sided perspective. They're telling us what the alleged victims are saying. They're not telling us what his lawyers are saying during the cross-examination, and they're not giving us the full details in the cross-examination, right? So this is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. At this point, I'm not really sure what to think about this. I'm not sure if who's winning in this situation. I think that was done by design. They wanted to keep the media out of this, and they wanted to basically limit the information that the media gets. And I actually almost think that it's almost a conspiracy, because here you have the situation where you're getting these preferred news outlets that can come in and give you the information that they want to give you, right? And in my personal opinion, I haven't seen any unbiased information from the news outlets. So I don't know. I mean, I can almost say it's a conspiracy. I wish they would have had just brought a camera in and basically let everyone and their mama basically review the case and be a witness to the case. But instead, we're getting, this biased information. So that's pretty much it. That's my piece on this situation. That's all I had to say. Um, Hopefully, no one thought I was victim shaming or victim abusing. If you watch this live stream, you think I'm victim shaming or victim abusing, definitely leave your comments below. I'm trying to move to a unbiased platform. Of course, I have a little bias towards R. Kelly because, again, I think a lot of things that were done uh, in this case is basically a persecution and not a prosecution. So, there's a little bias there. But I try not to be too biased. I try to be even-handed a little bit. So if you thought I was victim bashing or basically blaming the victims, comments below. If you have any comments in terms of how you think this case is going, is R. Kelly winning? Is he losing? Comments below. Myself, I'll say this. The way it's being portrayed, the way things are set up, it looks like they're basically trying to paint a losing picture for R. Kelly because all you see them talk about is the testimony from the alleged victims, right? That's all you see them talk about. And very few outlets will come in and basically give you a balanced report, right? I think there was one or two articles that I read yesterday that talked about how the defense poked holes in the prosecution's case. But, for the most part, a lot of the news outlets are trying to paint this picture that, he's losing. So I'll say that at least. But, in terms of what's, the actual score count in this case, I couldn't even, begin to speculate. All I can do is report, what I'm reading out there in these news articles. So that's pretty much going to be it for this live cast. Definitely, when the live cast is over, leave your questions and comments on the live on the live stream. Let me know what you think. Is R. Kelly? Who is Jane Doe number 5? Did R. Kelly give her an STD? What do you think about Jane Doe number 5? And is R. Kelly winning or losing in this case? That's it. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.